Well, hello and welcome to the webinar talk show. I am Liz Green.
And I'm Tom Singer. And Eliz and I started this program almost a year ago in the midst of the pandemic because Eliz and I believe deeply that information should be presented in ways that are just more interesting than a talking head over PowerPoint. And we believe that when you have in-depth interviews, great knowledge can be shared in a super engaging manner.
Absolutely. Now, if you have watched this show, you probably already know that Tom and I belong to an association called the National Speakers Association. And we love our association. And I just received my 15-year pin, which I thought I would open on the show because we actually have a member of the staff of the National Speakers Association here with us today. This is taking longer than I anticipated.
Well, I was going to say, if I had thought ahead, I could have worn my 10-year pin.
There you go. I got you beat, though.
You've been around more than me.
Yeah, well, I'm a little older than you, so, you know. So anyway, we are proud members of the National Speakers Association. Tom, you attended in person the National Speakers Association Winter Conference last weekend. We're going to debrief that a little bit, but we're also going to talk about the value gap. How are associations communicating value when some of the things that we typically have valued over past years maybe aren't the same this year, last year? And we could not be more excited to welcome the Chief Revenue Officer from NSA. He is in charge of marketing, advertising, communication, all things money that makes the association sustainable so NSA can support speakers, professional speakers, in becoming better and having better businesses. Welcome to the webinar talk show, Rhette Baughman. Yay!
Hey, Rhette.
Thank you so much.
Now,
two of my favorite people, Liz, Tom. I'm such big fans. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you. And thank you very, very much, because this is not your normal. You are not the face of NSA. We've asked you to come and sort of give us a little behind the scenes of the thought behind communicating value to our membership, because that's the theme of our season, the third season. I think NSA has done an amazing job. We're not going to use the P word. We're going to talk swiveling into the new, that's we've started to use that word instead. Swiveling into the future of associations and events. It's been kind of a challenging year over the last 12 months for all associations. Tell us a little bit about what you have done swiveling to communicate value to the membership.
Well, Liz, I'm going to be totally honest. First of all, most associations have this issue, right? Like the number one benefit of why you join an association typically is for the community, unless you're joining, a certain trade association. So what we had to do, first of all, during the summer of last year was figure out what value we did bring to the membership as an association, right? Because most professional speakers such as you and Tom, I'm sure, joined because of that abundant generosity and that spirit of Cavett, which is our founder, to connect with the community. So we as an association first had to identify, how are we serving professional speakers? What are we bringing to the table that would make them want to renew, A, and B, would get an ROI for that investment, right?
Right.
So do you want me to go into some of what we discovered?
Yes.
I think that would be awesome. Yes.
So first and foremost, we had to figure out, how are we going to serve professional speakers rather than just being a membership organization? So we narrowed it down to two things. We help professional speakers become better speakers, and we help them build a better speaking business. And that might sound pretty basic, but we were kind of all over the board. And nothing negative. It's just we served everyone, everywhere, in every way. So when we really narrowed that down, we said, well, yeah, we create meaningful connections between members so they can learn from each other. We create incredible content. We need to own that. We partner with all these different third-party organizations and companies to bring value and benefits to members. So once we got that focus down, we were able to clearly communicate, because we understood how we serve the membership base and the speaking industry at large.
So did you guys look at how do we communicate now that we know what we do? How do we let our members know what we do? And I think one of the things I know that your organization's done is you've made a pledge that you're trying to reach out to every single member individually as the staff. How's that going, and how are members responding to the individual reach out?
Well, first of all, that was a really big project, and we announced it before we realized how big of a project that was going to be, but it's actually been exceptional. So everyone from the person who answers the phone when you first call, all the way up to the CEO, all the way up to the board, we're making calls to every single member. And what we do is we get on a Zoom call, we do a little screen share, we walk through all the benefits, we answer questions, we tour things that they can't see, like the NSA Digital Vault, which is our e-learning platform. You can't typically see it. So we give a little preview of it in case people are interested. That's been exceptional for so many reasons. One, member engagement. Just in general, connecting with members as an association is always a really good thing to do. Yeah. Two, hearing the members' feedback. What do they care about? What do they not care about? I mean, our scripts, quote unquote, has morphed since we started doing these, because we realized most members may not care about X, so we briefly cover that. And then the other thing from a marketing standpoint is I got to hear real time how people were responding to the ways that we're talking about things and what they care and don't care about. So we've adjusted all of our email copy. We're launching a brand new website in less than 30 days. That's all informed from these calls. That's been an exceptional experiment. Sorry, I shouldn't call it an experiment.
No, but it is, right? All new endeavors, there's this experiment, some element that you aren't exactly sure. You hope you know the outcome, but there is that loop of let's try this, let's get feedback, let's improve it, let's get feedback. That's a very important part of all of those processes. I want to go back to what you said, though, is that you were providing everything to everybody all of the time. And before COVID, there were a lot of associations, I think, that had the luxury of doing that, where their members are just invested. They're going to write their membership check we don't write checks anymore, but they're going to click that button to renew. Right. Every year, because they just have that loving feeling for their association. But then when there's monetary challenges, you can't just have the luxury of doing everything for everybody all the time.
Right.
I think that has been a really interesting experiment to watch as NSA has traveled these last 12 months, and we're heading into a new year with hopefully some more opportunities opening up. Yeah, right. Speaking of opportunities opening up, this event, the Winter Conference last weekend, was a hybrid event, which is pretty exciting. We've had lots of people on the show talking about the future of events being hybrid. I'm guessing there might have been a few challenges in communicating how that was going to work as you moved into that. You're ahead of the curve on this in terms of providing. What were some of those challenges, and what did you do?
Sure. And if you don't mind, I'd like to back up one step and pretend I don't work for NSA. It was so cool. And it was awesome. And we pulled it off, right? It was really, really awesome. Obviously, me being part of the association, you expect me to say that, but if I was just an observer, there were so many cool things, and I don't mean to overuse that word, but I'll explain a little more, just elements to this hybrid event that I was really proud that NSA was leading the charge to do some of this stuff that just hadn't been done before. But going back to your question, some of the challenges, I mean, and the whole hindsight is 2020. Now, looking back, there's so many ways that we could have better done everything. But one of the things that we had to try to communicate right off the bat was what was going on. And as simple as that seemed to be pretty complicated because people were confused. If I buy the virtual ticket, what happens? If I buy the on-site, do I still get all the virtual stuff? Because for everyone listening, we started the event on February 2nd. So at the beginning of February. And then every week we had what we called our virtual warm-up, which was like our breakout sessions. And it all ended in Atlanta with our main event, which was like our main stage. And our virtual attendees were still attending live there, but it wasn't just a live streamed event. It was this whole engaging, really cool way of bringing the audiences together. We only had about 25, 30 people on site as our studio audience. It was just a really neat experience, but all through it, And Tom was one of the ones that attended, which was super exciting to see him in person.
Mm,
But all through it, I found that people were just confused because some of this stuff
mm,
hadn't been done before. We had this compared to both of you as our MCs of influence know that platform was a great band-aid for the time. We've
mm-hmm.
now moved to an event platform that's really meant for this. It was simple. There was one place to log in for all the networking, for all the sponsors, for every link. Everything that happened was in one spot. So that was easy, but people were still confused, especially the ones that attended influence. Like, where do I go to watch the recordings? Where do I go to do this?
Mm-hmm.
So what we found that some of the challenges of communicating was you can never over communicate.
Mm,
And I think that in hindsight, one thing I wish we would have done is just continually hound more and more. And then the other thing I'll comment on that was a challenge was when we went to market, we heard from our members. So we made some assumptions based off that, how excited they were to be back in person and they wanted to meet,
mm,
they wanted to do events. We even saw on like LinkedIn and Facebook, a lot of our members were traveling and hosting, smaller events, but in person. So we were really excited out of the gate thinking everyone's on board. Guess what? Everyone wasn't on board. And we actually got a lot of pushback when people were like, you're not being safe. This is not the responsible thing to do. So we had to take
mm,
that challenge on and really stop, because we didn't make that decision lightly. As you both know, our
mm-hmm.
members' safety was paramount. And it's funny to say that and then hear people say back, obviously not if you're having an in-person event. But what I will say is, having gone through it now, and I was on the fence a little bit, I was nervous about how this was
Mm-hmm.
all going to go. But and Tom, you could probably speak to this as an attendee, but I was so confident in the way that the hotel handled things,
Mm,
everything from how they served food to how they were sanitizing. Our team was super safe. We were taking, temperatures every morning, giving a certain color sticker, meaning you were good for the day, doing surveys ahead of time. But going back to communication, there was no great way to communicate.
mm.
In marketing, I would typically do the whole guilt thing, like, you got to sign up, we're running out of seats. But we
Right.
were trying to be really careful with this one of, if you're comfortable, because we didn't want to guilt anyone into attending. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Yes,
Oh,
absolutely it
ab-
does.
absolutely. And as somebody who was there in person, I made the decision to go. I had a conversation with my wife, and she said, you used to travel 100 nights a year. You've been away from the home 3 nights in the last year. Because I think this is your mental health day to be able to go and be
Mm,
with your friends and be part of this thing. But I wanted to remain safe as well. So oftentimes, if I go by myself, I'll share a room with somebody. This time I did not, because I
right.
took on the whole expense of the hotel room because I wanted to be safer. The second
Right.
thing was, I loved that they were taking the temperature every day. But I will tell you, I got worried. Not that I was afraid I was sick, but I also know that after you go running or after something else, your temperature can fluctuate. So every time I would
Mm,
go in, I mean, it was like they would take my temperature and I would be like, oh no. And of course, every day it was fine, but you know, but there was also steps that were communicated in advance that if you have a higher temperature, here are the steps. Here's what happens. It wasn't just like
mm.
suddenly you have a scarlet letter on or anything like that. So I felt that you all did a great job of taking the safety precautions and about communicating them. But if you back up a month before the event, even on Facebook, there was a chain where somebody was saying this is
Yeah.
irresponsible and all that. And I just don't see that. I think it was done very responsibly.
Thank you. And I'm sure your wife appreciated the break, Tom, as well.
I think that was the real truth was she wanted me out of the house for 2 days for her own mental health.
Which,
Uh,
it's been a while, right?
yeah.
It's been a while. And I think what you were saying about making an assumption about how eager people were to be in person, but then that's not everybody. That's exactly the same thing that we were talking about before. Like, you put something out, you get feedback, you reassess. I mean,
Mhm.
that's all part of that process. And I think a lot of us, when we're thinking marketing, it's like, there, I did my marketing. Like, there it
Yeah.
is, it's done. It sounds like your approach is much more of a feedback loop, constant adjustment sort of idea. What do you
Mhm.
think, looking at perhaps what is going on elsewhere, where do you think that breakdown happens? And what do you do to make sure you're getting that feedback?
Well, in general, I would say our internal culture is very results driven.
Mm,
So we take surveys, we get the data, we implement, and we tend to release things kind of in a beta version, like a little bit will be released and we'll see what the response is. Then we'll release a little bit more. We do that with everything. We do that with our digital ads, with our whole, I guess our brand, the way that we communicated, our tone of voice, we shifted over the last several years and we tried to make it pretty gradual. But if you'll go back and look at our communications from 3 years ago to today, you'll notice that we're very human now, a little bit sarcastic. Like there's a lot of fun woven into our communications. That was a slow but intentional process. And we tested the waters to see how each segment of our audience responded. And they all responded really well, right? So we'd rolled that out super slow. So we don't want to ever do anything where we launch it and then have to pull it back because, it didn't get the response that we were expecting. So how do we do that with big things like this? Well, this would have been a learning lesson. I wish for the in-person that we had released it to a small audience and gotten the feedback. But that was one of the mistakes where we made an assumption that everyone was on board with a certain way. And so just, in retrospect with that one specifically, I kind of wish we would have released it to smaller groups. But we, had the staff in a funnel, and then we had the board, and then we have our committees. And then sometimes you get that group think where everyone's kind of on the same page. Yeah. And, I have safe holds in place. I have a marketing expertise group of different people in the community to pull from. This is one of those things I didn't run past them. Wish I would have. And for anyone looking to improve communications, I highly recommend getting a group of thinkers from your audience that can give you feedback, because that group has been tremendous. And I know Liz and Tom, I've used both of you for that as well in the past.
Yeah. Honored to
do
so.
So Rhett, the National Speakers Association swiveled to do a virtual event for the large summer influence conference. And then they swiveled again and did this hybrid event that was very successful for the winter conference. As you look out to next summer, to July, what will happen this summer, and how do you now take the experience of the two events and move it forward? Because one of the ways that associations bring value to their members is through events. I mean, that hasn't changed. So how do you prepare for your large event this time with having a year of this under your belt?
Well, one thing we learned for sure from last summer, was how important MCs are. And Tom and Liz, you were our MCs for that event. It's more than just having someone that knows what's going on and can communicate with energy and clearly, right? It's that content weaving, and it's really making it one big experience for attendees, especially something virtual. People are coming on halfway in. Right, they're seeing the testimonials and the ads, and they're joining halfway through the process. Having good MCs like you both were is imperative to that success. What we learned from winter was virtual, or the hybrid, even more so. So really combining that virtual and that hybrid and that in-person experience, you need to make everyone feel included and welcome and like they're all part of that experience. I mean, we had John Petz and Pam Line-Miller were our MCs for this event. If there's one piece of advice I can give to anyone hosting any kind of event, in person, hybrid, or virtual, it's you have to have good MCs. I'm not talking about your executive director or your CEO who, is fun and charismatic behind the mic. No, you need someone that's experienced with weaving this content and experience together. And I know that's not really my wheelhouse. That's more the event planning committee. But for me, Tom, communicating on site to the virtual and the in-person of things that were going on. I'm not going to pick up a mic. I'm not going to put Mary Lou in that position to pick up a mic and try to communicate things. The MCs were imperative to get those messages out and make sure we were weaving in things like our values. So we always want to make sure that people are joining the association who align with us. So we put our values forefront, weaving all those into the conference, weaving in our products. And I know it sounds super corporate-y and businessy, but when something's going to be recorded and put in the digital vault, we want to make sure that that's mentioned. So having a good MC that really understands your products, really understands your goals and your mission, all that's super imperative. And I'm sorry, Tom, I got a little off track with your question.
No, that wasn't off track. And a couple of times you've mentioned the digital vault, and that's something that NSA launched a year ago. And really in that, it's a wonderful value for members, and there's a little extra payment to have access to it. But it's all of the speeches and sample contracts. And I mean, there's so many different layers of things that members can access in there that really it's a great idea for other associations to have some sort of a of a place where people can access the learning and the resources, etc.
Mm-hmm. And it's been, and I know this sounds salesy whenever I talk about it because it's a product that I sell, but the value that it brings to members, like if you watch one session from the $1 Million Speaker Group and implement what you learn, you'll 10x make what you invested in. I mean, it's a no-brainer. And we put most of the recordings from the events in there. The contract templates alone that you mentioned, Tom, members have been giving feedback that alone. I mean, they're like, I would have paid my lawyer, at least $1,000 for this. Sorry, I'm going to digress on that one, but it's an exceptional value for members.
So going back to this hybrid event, the one other thing I want to add that wasn't part of what you all put forward, but something I learned on day 2 was, as a member of the live audience, I could log on my phone to the digital version, turn my volume all the way down because I don't need the volume because the speaker's right in front of me.
Right.
And I could join the chat room. And that was exciting because that sort of bridged the world from being virtual and live. And there were people texting me directly, saying, what's it like to be there? And so the two worlds were able to come together. And I thought, I'm telling all my association clients who are doing hybrid, make sure you tell your in-person audience that they can do this. And then also make sure there's an easy way for them to do it so the communities can combine.
Yes. And I think that's a great point for our next event, is encouraging our audience. Cause there was like 3 or 4 of you that were doing that in the main session. And that's kind of the fun thing about virtual events, is that chat room, because you're having that live dialogue, the live feedback. But then in person, the speaker likes the live feedback, literally, the clapping and the hearing. So having those blend together, I thought was really cool.
Well, and it's just another way to bridge that gap between the two audiences. And that's what we're always trying to do. I mean, that's Tom and I, that's our job when we're doing a hybrid event, is to bridge that gap and to make sure that both audiences are getting that value. So if you have something in the palm of your hand, how great is that? I was also wondering, I just did an event for audiologists, and they were talking about how your phone can directly input to a hearing aid. So if you're hard of hearing, I wonder if that just makes that meeting even more accessible than it was before, which makes me wonder. But I digress there. I'm on the committee that is working on Influence 2021, which is coming up in July. There are a lot of things in the works for that, and building on what was tested at Winter Conference, I'm sure. Yeah. When we're looking forward and thinking about making this event, communicating the value of whether you're going to attend in person, you're going to attend in your box from your office or your kitchen or whatever, and maybe we get to expand it a little bit to another watch party type of option. What are you thinking about in that communication strategy that maybe other people don't think about? What's the strategy there?
If there's one thing that I am a big advocate for sharing with anyone that's looking to communicate, is Donald Miller, his Business Made Simple, Clear Communication. He's the story brand framework guy. We went through all of that. And the one big takeaway was clarity. And so I started using a phrase like, I'd rather be clear than cute. So rather than trying to find fun ways of saying things and make it energetic, that's the MC's job, is to make it fun. The communications that go out ahead of time, and in videos and things, we want all those to be fun, but the goal of everything is clarity. So if I can talk, not in a disrespectful way, but if I can talk to my audience like they're in 6th grade, and I want it to be really clear, if you're doing A, this is what you do. If you're doing B, this is what you do, right? So however you're going to participate, here's your options, here's what you're going to do. And in full transparency, I think we missed the boat on some of those things with Winter that we're looking to make up for in Influence, which is this coming summer conference, of being really clear. If you're signing up for virtual, here's what you get and how you're going to participate, and here's the value you're going to receive. So I think that's really important to paint for attendees, of what is my return, what is my value at this ticket level. And then what happens if I decide that I want to attend in person? If I decide I want to host a watch party, how do I? Where do I? When do I? All those questions, the standard who, what, when, where, why, how, has to be answered really clearly, clear over cue.
I like that.
And I've also done clear over clever when we're trying to name things, because I'd rather what we're doing rather than have a fun, catchy name. But our audience, they like a little sizzle, so we have to be fun.
We do. But it also goes back to, what Tom and I say about presenting is that heart and great content is going to win over gee whiz wow every single time.
Yeah.
So I think it's the same idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that.
So, Rhett, as we wrap this up, what's one piece of advice you would tell people who work in other associations when it comes to communicating value and ways that maybe they can show that value? And also, since you're the chief revenue officer, how can they make sure they continue to generate revenue? What advice do you have for other people?
I would say know and own your value. So you got to identify it, and then you got to own it, right? So we got a little bit, I probably shouldn't be saying this, we got a little cocky with it, right? We started saying, if you want to become a professional speaker, this is where you come. This is how you do it, because we owned our value. The second thing is, I'll say it again, clear over cute, clear over catchy, clear over clever, being clear in your communications. That's how you're going to make more money. If people understand it, they're going to buy it. And then the third thing, you had asked, and I forgot, so I'm having trouble remembering. What was the third piece, Tom?
No, I think you just covered all of it. It was how can associations then generate more revenue?
Oh, more revenue. Yeah.
But I think you covered that. I mean, I think you showed that if you're doing those things, your members will come back and they'll sign up for your products if it's clear and they understand what they're getting. So, Rhett, one more thing. Go ahead.
Oh, Tom, the only thing I would add on to that is when you're looking to make more revenue is what we always do is we put the members' need at the forefront of every single thing that we're looking to add, everything we're looking to do. So if someone comes to us with a great revenue generating opportunity, but it's not going to serve the members, we usually won't even entertain it. And we've just found that the more that we put the members' needs, what they truly need, at the forefront of all of our business decisions, let's just say the universe works it out and it makes more sense for everybody.
That is good.
And the one thing that you all did this year, and a little self-serving because I partnered with you to be the host of it, but NSA launched a brand new podcast for people who make money with the spoken word.
Good.
And you lived by everything you just said. All of it has been in the communication with me of what we're trying to create together has all been about providing value and actionable tips on how to make more money and be a better speaker. And so, but that was a big deal to launch something new for the organization in the middle of a pandemic, right?
Mm-hmm. But we got really lucky with a good host. So.
And it's not just for professional speakers, we'll say. Right. It is great for professional speakers, don't get me wrong. And if you haven't been listening to Speakernomics, you definitely need to be. I listened, it comes out on Tuesday mornings. I listened to the one from yesterday and I'm already like, dang, I need to do that. It's really good. But for people in the meetings industry, there is so much good content in there. It is something everybody in the meetings industry should be listening to. Speakernomics, go find that wherever you listen to your podcasts. Absolutely shameless plug. But if somebody wanted to find out more about the National Speakers Association, where would they find that information?
nsaspeaker.org. That's a singular, nsaspeaker.org. And I highly recommend you look at it after April 5th because we'll have a beautiful new website.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Rhett, thank you so much for joining us here on the Webinar Talk Show.
Thank you both. Appreciate you.
This was a great conversation. And it does underline the whole idea of this show that you can get so much more in a great conversation than if we just had him come and present 25 minutes of slides. Yep. So,
absolutely. Yep, that's right.
We are taking a little break on next Monday because we're with clients. But if you want to see us on Wednesday next week, we are going to be talking about the 4 different types of MCs, why you need to know what those roles are, and how many roles can one person play in an event? We're going to be talking about all of that.
I don't think one person is every type of MC. I know when you and
I
I
agree.
are up for a deal to work with an association, if they want a magician or a juggler, that's not Eliz or I. And
Right.
so there
That's
is
a
that
wow
entertainment.
MC.
Wow, yeah. And
Yeah.
so we have put together sort of some ideas of the different types and what you need for different types of events. And so the show is just going to be Eliz and I talking about what you need to be looking for in a master of ceremonies. So I think we're going to
Right.
share some really good ideas.
Absolutely. If you want to catch that on Facebook, go to webinartalkshow.live. If you want to know more about what Tom and I do with clients, where would we find that?
Webinartalkshow.com. They can find out more about hiring us to work with them to make their event pop.
Absolutely. Rhett, thank you so much for joining us. This was great fun. I can't wait until we get to all be together again, but I'll take virtually for now. We'll see you all next week. Have a great rest of your day. Great
Bye.
weekend. See you next week.
Bye, y'all.